Welcome to Life by Design, episode 317. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I'm joined today by my colleague and good friend, Dr. Horatio Judd.
Jamie, I'm always glad to be here, but if they only knew what kind of a blooper reel we just ran through to get that intro out.
That's on a regular basis. We do have some old bloopers from the olden days that I have actually kept just for posterity's sake.
Well, nobody is as crazy as and silly as Dr. Joel used to get. So
no, those 20-minute shows sometimes took us a while to get through, but they were a ton of fun to record. Though.
It was fun. It was super fun.
We are creators of Life by Design with many locations worldwide. Each week on the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today, we're talking about eggs. Eggs, do they increase the risk of cardiovascular disease? You might have seen this in the news, in your news feed, on social media, and it definitely caught my eye. Again, coming from a Eat by Design, Life by Design perspective, the alarms went up, and I thought, oh, you know what's interesting? I don't want to say I don't read all the research studies anymore, but it's just so often that you're getting these things. Meat's bad for you. Eggs increase cholesterol or increase cardiovascular risk in this case. And then you actually start looking at the research study. You actually go back to the primary research and you start to break these down. And just so often, over and over, we've essentially got to the point where it's not really changed anything about what we're recommending. I'm not saying that I'm not open that maybe research is going to find something different, but let's do that today. Let's talk about this research study because I know I've gotten messages and emails already. We've endorsed people to eat whole foods, and eggs are a whole food. I think in this study you were saying before that they consider 2 eggs, was it? That 2 eggs are a lot or overconsumption?
Yeah. I don't think it's labeled overconsumption, but I think that their recommendation,
right.
and by there, I don't remember. I actually wanted to read the study. A lot of it was like when you get these studies, you're reading somebody's interpretation of the study, like an author, like the Globe and Mail link that we have in. And I think I included the actual Northwestern because the researchers were from Northwestern University. Excuse me. You read a round, like it's kind of like a review of somebody reading the article. So, and this one was interesting. I don't know. I just couldn't seem to find the Jam article because it's always good to actually read the article. I think that's kind of the point for today, is to do. I mean, at the end of the day, your life is your responsibility, and so is your health. And it's when you catch a headline like this, of course I'm going to look at it. But the point is to make your own decisions and consult with as many people as you possibly can.
Right. Do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're a layperson and maybe this is not an area of your, expertise, and reading research is not something that you do or really considered that you would do a great job of, find people who can. Success leaves clues. Hopefully you can rely on us. If you have questions, by all means, send them to us. We can talk about them on the show. Fire off an email, Facebook, Instagram, and so on. But this was published. It was a large study. So, I mean, the other part of the conversation here is, as much as we want people to do their due diligence and look into things, you also don't want to discount data, and especially when you have them that's, say, conflicting in some way. The issue with data, and this I think more and more is becoming evident, and it's established in the culture, is that research doesn't hold, I don't think, the same level of value, not value, I guess, but what's the word? Social proof, I suppose, is the way to think of it, as it did maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And part of that is due to the conflicts of interest. Lots of research here I'm using research as a way to support that research doesn't work, but you get the idea.
Glad you caught yourself, because I was going to call you out on that one.
Yeah. But my point is that it's become evident that there's lots of ways to change data and to read data and to interpret data. So not that data is not valuable, but you have to also look at it in the bigger context of things and look at, what's being measured and how that is extrapolating to either a headline or some type of conclusion. What I will tell you, and we'll go into a bit of the details here, but I know both of us agree, it doesn't change what we recommend. That's really what it comes down to. Is this changing what we recommend? So, they recommend, say, 2 eggs a week as being on the higher end. And we were joking around, but not really. I mean, in our family, we go through at least 24 eggs a week, if not 36 eggs a week between the four of us.
Yeah, so I mean, the recommendation is always going to be to eat real food. That's the first recommendation. I don't. Again, I think there's a couple things that are important that we chat about. You're right. Data is data. Reality exists. So when something shows up like this, I think it is important to pay attention. However, like you said, data doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? What makes data important to humans and to life is value judgments. Why is this valuable, and what are we trying to achieve by knowing this, right? And that's where the humanity of all this comes into effect. So when you have the World Health organization, when you have the World Health Organization and even the government of America taking cholesterol off of the foods that you need to watch list, right? So which indicates that they're not worried about a threat to cardiovascular illness anymore. It's just interesting that something like this comes out, which flies in the face of that, which I think it's interesting to talk about.
Well, yeah, and for so long that's been at the top of the list is, foods that are thought to have
Yeah.
cholesterol in them or have cholesterol in them are thought to raise blood cholesterol. And, the research that they're going on is that maybe it doesn't have as dramatic of effect as it was thought. And I've seen
Right.
data somewhere between 5 and 20% of your food cholesterol is going to show up as, correlative with whatever your blood cholesterol levels are. There's the whole conversation outside the scope today about, we're measuring LDLs and HDLs, and are we measuring small particle, large particle, and how
Yep.
those relate to cardiovascular disease. But I think one of the things when I saw the study that that is always challenging in these food type studies is using surveys. That's a big flaw, obviously. You're asking somebody, what did you eat over the last year? I don't remember what I ate in March 29th, 2018. I don't remember what I ate on, February 28th on 2018. So how do people remember what that was? And then again, I'd have to look at the research closer, but they're not actually getting what people ate over the 31 years. So the median timeline for people in this study, of which there was almost 30,000 people. So it was quite a robust number of people, but the timeline was an average of 17 and a half years, which is a very long time. But there's no way that you're actually doing food logs for all of these people over a 17-year period. They're looking at, trying to get people to remember what they ate, and then 17 years later, looking at how that, or in this case, up to 31 years later, how that showed up as cardiovascular disease. So you can't make this relationship, as you would see in the headline, that this somehow increased blood cholesterol and cardiovascular disease, because they weren't actually measuring, as you were talking on the pre-show, they weren't actually measuring blood cholesterol.
Yeah. So again, the assumption and the correlation, because it's far from like this is causative, but the association that they're trying to make and what they found from the study is that over that time, when they took the survey, the people who were eating the most cholesterol-rich foods, they found when they removed some of the other factors, they had a higher incidence of heart disease and cardiovascular disease.
Right.
But again, like you said, it didn't measure what happened over, like the median age was 17 years. Some people were tracked for like over 30 years, right? So a lot can change in your life over that time, and you make different decisions, you come accustomed to new data. So exercise habits come and go. Maybe you smoke, maybe you don't smoke, you're under stress, you change jobs, you move, people have car accidents. So it's
just think over the 10 years of Life by Design, pre-Life by Design, let's say 11 years ago. What did you eat on a regular basis? And then here now we are 10 years later, the way you eat is entirely changed. So if you would have done a food survey 10 years ago, and then we would have measured your cardiovascular disease today or 10 years from now, there's no way you could relate that to what was on your food survey 11 years ago. It'd be impossible.
Even the way we record podcasts, if this is like 5 years ago, I probably would have been like ranting and raving. But like the reality of it is the facts are the facts, and we're trying to teach people to be responsible for their health. So we're just breaking down a study and offering both sides of how this could be actually helpful to you, versus a terrifying headline, eggs will kill you, or whatever they wrote, something silly like that, where that might not necessarily be the case.
And this is in the face of some other research that we've talked about before, primary research looking at actual, say, consumption and blood markers, and looking at what's happening now in this moment in these people. So again, is causative? Is there just simply a correlation? And what other factors are involved? At the end of the day, you'd have to tease all that out, go deeper and deeper on this. But our recommendation is still the same. It's consuming real food. Egg is a real food. Now, I think that, again, part of this, as a side note, and we'll go down this rabbit hole, I guess, is that it's also the context of what your goals are. So sure, eggs from a pure health perspective, let's say they fall into the whole food category, so we're going to consume them. But let's say our goal, Cratio, is not necessarily overall health and function. Maybe it includes fat loss. Then maybe we're going to change what we eat. I was just looking at research today that was, measuring. I thought it was very actually interesting research, and maybe podcast worthy on another day. Was looking at the relationship between food density and so nutrient density, and then also looking at the macronutrients and which ones and combinations of them made us more satiated. And I thought it was very interesting that basically, what they acknowledged is that the whole low fat, higher carbohydrate diet, this one that would be promoted by lots of people, especially, in the last 20 years, actually has pretty high satiation levels. And then the flip side of that is moderate or higher protein and low carbohydrate with a moderate fat content also has a pretty high satiation level and has tons of nutrients and nutrient density. And that's more along the lines of, if it was going to be a fat loss goal, that's what we would recommend for most people. And then what they found was when you started to combine fats and carbohydrates, that's when the satiation levels would drop. And so what I loved about this research, it was looking at fat loss. And basically what the take home is as much as, meal planning and all these things were important, what they're suggesting is the most important thing is, are you satisfied? Because when you're satisfied, you just eat less food. And at the end of the day, all these other mechanisms put to the side, eating less food is probably the number one way to lose body fat. And I just thought it was interesting that, eggs, to bring it full circle, maybe eating tons and tons of eggs wouldn't necessarily be on the list if fat loss was your primary goal.
Yeah, again, going back full circle to this episode, like data is data, but data doesn't exist in a vacuum. Like at the end of the day, it has to be applied. Right? Like, gravity's gravity. Gravity doesn't care and it's neutral. It just works the way that it works, but it can either be a good thing or a bad thing, whether you're trying to propel something, keep it on the ground, or you're plummeting to your death from the top of a skyscraper, right? So it's human values that make things good or bad. The facts are just the facts, and it's interesting because even when you read through the studies, I mean, the researchers themselves, they acknowledge the nutrient density of eggs and egg yolk and how it contains a lot of minerals, and it's still a food that definitely shouldn't be avoided, right? So, I mean, it's not like, they didn't realize the limitations of what they found. They just found what they found.
Right. They're just sharing the data in that sense. And it's good for us because we like to do shows about this and talk about this. So guys, if you go to the show notes, you can check out the Globe and Mail article. You can also check out the article from Science Daily. If you haven't yet, head over and join the free 30-day Eat by Design challenge. If you're looking to really ramp up things here, summer's getting close, Cratio, so it's a great time to get
beach bod,
get bathing suit ready. So go check out the 30-day challenge. It's free. You just go in, log in, you'll be able to get 30 days of videos, and there's a free Eat by Design book there as well. So guys, check that out at the show notes, lifebydesign.com/podcast. And thank you as always for listening and joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.